let's get straight into it, shall we? And look at our takeaways from USMNT against Mexico. What did we learn about the US side? That some of the hopeful players who are looking to wedge their way into that starting lineup for interim boss Anthony Hudson. And Nick, 1-1 draw. Jesus Ferreira, a late equaliser after Altry went ahead from a bit of a mistake from the US in the second half. So what were your general thoughts from yet another intense game between the USA and Mexico, as it always is?
Yeah, listen, it's always fun to different levels of fun to see the U.S. the players in the kit and going against Mexico. So we'll take that a lot of times. I will say that it was one of those games where you're looking around and thinking, "This is in the United States. This is in the United States. This is in the United States." A very pro-Mexico crowd at the beginning of the game. I couldn't help but notice it. But again, one of my takeaways is that the guys who were members of the regular team looked like they were guys of the members of the regular team for the most part. Walker Zimmerman was quite good. Serginho Dest looked a level above, if you will. And I'm a Jordan Morris fan. I know there are a lot of people out there who kind of look at him as that sort of, man, I wish the team were at the point where a guy like him were more fringe. But I'm not usually worried when he's out there, and he works his butt off, and he's in good form. And that cross on the Ferreira goal, whether intended or not from Ferreira, was really pretty.
Yeah, it was. And like you said, they're sort of defensively, obviously, Long was kind of put in a bad position to deal with that with the ball back to him. Obviously, that led to Mexico's opener. But yeah, Dest, the left back, Yedlin back there, Zimmerman, and even Kellen Acosta ahead of him, Jesus Ferreira. A lot of experience there with this US team now. And a lot of those guys you'd have to think for the Gold Cup coming up this summer, they'll be key pieces in that US team. Up top, though, again, has always been the big issue. Brandon Vasquez started. What do we think? What do we think about him, Nick? We've seen him a few times now in these recent months for the US. Is he the guy up top that they need to give more opportunities to this summer and beyond? Or there's not many other options, right? Ricardo Pepe's doing well in Europe. Daryl Dike's just gone down with a long-term injury, which was a blow. But John Pefok isn't really doing it for Union Berlin at the moment. So not many other opportunities. So what do we think of Vasquez?
Look, I think he's a super talented player. He's been ice cold this year. Well, not ice cold. He has a goal this year in MLS. I wish I knew what not to ask a bigger question, but I wish I knew where the program was going in terms of, coach, or is this an Anthony Hudson call or is it somebody else's? Because as I'm watching it, I'm still thinking, well, you know what? Haji Wright's probably their starting center forward, or Tim Weah playing slightly out of position when healthy. But we just don't know. We just don't know. And right now, as we watched the World Cup, we know what Greg Berhalter's plans are. So can I tell you that Brandon Vasquez might be starting for them at that position? He might be, but I feel like the uncertainty even bogs down a little bit of interest in the game itself. We're always going to watch USA versus Mexico because, first of all, the pageantry. Second of all, it's the USA. This is the team we love watching. But there's a little bit of, in any team, right? To a certain extent with Chelsea right now, if you don't know who the boss is and the stakes aren't there, it takes a little bit of the edge off the game.
It does. In terms of the rivalry, then, where is this kind of going? Because Mexico's in transition with a new coach. Obviously, we know a lot of their players, top players like the US, are in Europe. So we kind of still haven't really seen where they're going to go direction-wise with this new squad. But the US as well. Like you said, Anthony Hudson's then caretaker charge. There's not really going to be an appointment, it looks like, until later in the summer, it seems, when this search is kind of done about a new sporting director, going to have a hand in hiring a new head coach for the US, and potentially that could be Greg Berhalter coming back in. He's a candidate for that for sure. So what do you think in terms of the rivalry, where it's going and where these programs are at right now? Because obviously coming out of the World Cup, USA was way ahead of Mexico in terms of where they looked like they were at, but kind of seems like they're both, again, over the years, they always seem to follow each other and somehow end up side by side, right? Whenever one's up or down. So is that kind of the case right now?
I'm not sure, because I was ready to, at the outset of your question, basically say, yup. But as I really think about it, if you swapped the U.S. and Mexico's World Cup groups, would we say that the U.S. was coming out ahead? Because Mexico had that draw against Poland, and then they lost to a must-win Messi, right? They lost to a must-win, and then they beat Saudi Arabia. I have to think to myself that perhaps if the U.S. was, and let's face it, I would not have favored them to beat Poland. I would not have favored them to beat Argentina, and I would have thought they would beat Saudi Arabia. So the fact that they got out and accounted for themselves very well against the Netherlands, yeah, of course, I'm thinking that the U.S. is ahead. But, at this point in time, off cycle, if you will, with the Copa America a year and a half away, I think this is okay for almost any program to be in the wilderness. It doesn't make it fun, but to say with some of Mexico's attacking pieces, I always think in CONCACAF, you're a settled back four away from being an automatic qualifier, whoever you are, right? When Costa Rica was really driven by, in his prime, Kendall Waston, these teams that are like that, when you have your defense settled, and you can just tell your key attacking pieces to go get it, you can be fine in CONCACAF. And so I want to be careful of downgrading a Mexico program because they weren't operating at the heights that we're used to. Because I still think that watching them last night and the sort of, for lack of a better term, hunger that you get from teams looking to impress their coach, I'm not surprised that they got the result there.
And the USA's next game is against, you guessed it, Mexico, CONCACAF Nations.
Meaningful one.
Yeah. Very meaningful in June. So be intrigued to see what each team looks like then. We may have a bit more clarity on the USA's coaching search and if anyone's coming in then. But you mentioned it there. It was a great point in terms of almost mid-cycle and not being too detrimental at this point if you're still trying to figure it out. And everything is obviously planning ahead for the 2026 World Cup on home soil at this point. But the USA and Mexico both have the luxury of not having to qualify for that tournament. So right. I do wonder motivation levels a little bit. They don't have to qualify for a World Cup. Yes, they have the Copa America. Yes, they have Gold Cups and other games. But yeah, it might be a bit. Both these teams are going to be quite similar, I think, over the next few years in terms of motivation levels. Hey, what we're really playing for. But the main aim is going to be to when we get to the summer of 2026, we want to be firing all cylinders, have a clear identity. And I think in the USA's case, they're ahead of Mexico in terms of the young players they have playing at top teams across Europe. I think
for sure.
Mexico's players right now, there's that kind of apart from Lozano, I'm looking around and there is kind of a gap there of players coming through, getting that high level experience in Europe. So I think the US is probably still just ahead of Mexico right now. But as we know, there's only one win away in these rivalries from it flipping on its head. And they're so close together in this great rivalry. So head over to Pro Soccer Talk at NBCSports.com for all the latest news on the USA and Mexico. Big tournaments coming up this summer. We'll have you covered with Nations League, Gold Cup, and all that good stuff. And of course, whenever US players or Mexico players do something big in world soccer, we'll have you covered as well. So USA won, Mexico won. Always a fun game, a fun friendly, and just gave us a little bit of a taster for what's to come this summer, Nick. So really did enjoy that.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. For even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you over there.